The kestrel belt looked like a diamond necklace that had been smashed by a heavy hammer and left to rot in the dark. Millions of jagged shards of titanium, glass steel, and frozen confident ambition floated in a slow, grinding dance against the black velvet of deep space. To a poet, it might have been a tragedy of a lost shipping lane. To Jace Calder, it looked like a graveyard where the headstones were made of scrap metal that he could sell for 3 credits a pound. Jace sat in the pilot seat of the Moth, a salvage hauler that was more patches than hull. The air inside smelled of ozone, stale coffee, and the distinct metallic tang of recycled anxiety. He tapped the fuel gauge, hoping the needle would jump up if he hit it hard enough. It did not move. It stayed stubbornly hovering just above the red line that screamed empty. "You have 3 incoming priority messages from the Creditor Guild," the ship's AI announced. Its voice was a smooth, synthetic baritone that Jace had programmed to sound like a butler, a decision he now regretted deeply. The tone was far too polite for the impending doom of his finances, and a reminder that your oxygen scrubbers are operating at 60% efficiency. "Shall I draft a letter of apology to your lungs?" "Shut it, Moth," Jace muttered, leaning forward to squint at the sensor array. He ignored the flashing red lights on his dashboard. He was used to them. They were like Christmas lights, festive little reminders of his bad life choices. "Give me a scan on Sector 4. I swear I saw a glimmer near that shattered frigate. Sector 4 is highly unstable due to the approaching gravity storm," Moth replied. "The probability of finding valuable salvage is 12%. The probability of death by debris impact is 34%. The probability of you dying alone and broke is currently calculating at 99%. "Never tell me the odds," Jace said, firing the maneuvering thrusters. The Moth groaned as it pushed through the field. Jace's hands moved deftly over the controls. He was a good pilot, perhaps one of the best in the Outer Rim, but skill did not pay the interest on a predatory loan. He needed a payout, a big one. Then he heard it. It was not a roar or a beep, but a ghost on the audio sensors, a faint rhythmic thrumming, buried deep within the static of the belt. It did not sound like mechanical failure. It sounded like a heartbeat. Jace frowned, adjusting the frequency. "Isolate that signal." "Is that a distress beacon?" "It is broadcasting on an antiquated frequency," Moth said, the sarcasm dropping for a microsecond. "Source is embedded in that wreckage cluster. Identifying. It is a lifeboat pod. Class unknown." "But Jace, the energy signature is wrong." "Wrong how?" "It is organic." Jace brought the ship around a twisting spine of a destroyed capital ship. There, wedged between 2 massive plates of scorched armor, was a pod. It was not the clean white of the interstellar compact or the rusted iron of the scavengers. It was smooth, pearlescent, and pulsing with a soft, violet light. It looked less like a machine and more like an egg laid by a starship. "That is high-grade tech," Jace breathed. The greed center of his brain lit up like a flare. "If that casing is intact, the alloys alone are worth 6 months of fuel." He did not think about who was inside. "In the Kestrel belt, you assumed everyone was dead until they shot at you." He engaged the grapple. The magnetic clamps shot out, latching onto the pod with a dull thud that vibrated through the hull. "Reeling it in," Jace said. "Prep the airlock." As the pod was dragged into the Moth's cargo bay, the ship shuddered violently. "Gravity storm perimeter breached," Moth warned. "We have 5 minutes before the shear forces turn us into confetti." I know. Jace unbuckled, grabbing his laser cutter and a breather mask. He scrambled down the ladder to the cargo bay, his boots clanging on the grate. The air here was freezing, the heaters having failed 2 weeks ago. The pod sat in the center of the bay, steaming as the frost on its hull met the ship's atmosphere. Up close, it was even stranger. The surface felt warm to the touch, vibrating. Jace activated his cutter, the blue plasma flame roaring to life. He expected resistance. But the moment the flame touched the seal, the pod hissed. It did not melt. It retracted, the outer shell peeling back like the petals of a blooming flower. Jace killed the cutter and stepped back, his breath hitching in his chest. Inside lay a woman. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. She was tall, her limbs long and elegant, wrapped in a flight suit that had been scorched half off, revealing skin that seemed to hold the light of a captured moon. Her hair was a cascading river of silver, tangled around two distinct fox-like ears that twitched even in her unconscious state. But it was the veins that made Jace stare. Beneath her pale skin, intricate patterns of bioluminescent violet light pulsed in time with the thrumming sound he had heard. They traced the line of her throat, her collarbones, fading into the ruin of her uniform. On her shoulder, a diplomatic insignia, a stylized star, was burned, the edges blackened as if someone had tried to erase her identity with a heat gun. "She is alive," Jace whispered. He checked the bioscanner on his wrist. Her temperature is 104 degrees. "She is burning up." "Warning," Moth's voice blared over the bay speakers, loud and urgent. "Proximity alert. 3 patrol interceptors have dropped out of slipspace. They are locking weapons." Jace's head snapped up. "Patrol? Here? We are in the middle of nowhere. Broadcast incoming." A harsh, digitized voice filled the bay. "Unidentified salvage vessel. You are in possession of a stolen terrorist asset. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Non-compliance will result in immediate vaporization." "Terrorist asset?" Jace looked down at the woman. She looked about as dangerous as a sleeping candle. "They are charging main cannons," Moth said. Suggestion: panic. Jace did not panic. He acted. He could not leave her here. If they boarded, they would kill her. He didn't know why he knew that. But the scorched insignia told a story of execution, not arrest. And he was not going to let a girl get vaporized in his cargo bay. He grabbed her. She was heavier than she looked, dense with muscle and that strange, vibrating heat. He hauled her out of the pod, her head lolling against his chest. "Moth, divert all power to the rear shields. Get us into the storm. That is suicide," Moth observed. "It is better than execution." Jace dragged the woman toward the ladder. The ship rocked as a warning shot slammed into the shields. The lights in the cargo bay flickered and died. The gravity storm hit them a second later. The Moth groaned like a dying beast, metal screaming as the tidal forces of the anomaly twisted the hull. The artificial gravity failed instantly. Jace and the woman floated, weightless, in the dark corridor. He kicked off the wall, towing her through the air like a swimmer saving a drowning victim. Access panels sparked around them. "Life support is failing on decks 2 and 3, Moth reported, its voice distorting, rerouting reserves to the captain's quarters. It is the only sealed environment left." Jace pulled himself and the woman into his cramped cabin and slammed the airlock door. He spun the manual wheel, sealing them in. The roar of the storm outside was a muffled thunder. But in here, the air hissed back to life. Gravity returned with a lurch as the backup generator kicked in, dropping them both onto his narrow, unmade bunk. Jace groaned, checking his ribs. He scrambled up, adrenaline flooding his system. He looked at the woman. She was thrashing now. The violet light in her veins was erratic, flashing wildly. She gasped, her eyes snapping open. They were solid gold, no pupil, no sclera, just pools of molten light. She looked at Jace, but she did not see him. She saw a threat, or a savior. She grabbed his wrist. Her grip was iron. Her skin was burning hot, searing against his cool flesh. She spoke, but the words were a garble of static and chirps. Her translator, a silver choker around her neck, sparked blue. Target, sanctuary, thread. The machine spat out a mechanical, glitchy voice. "Calm down," Jace said, trying to pry her fingers off. "I am not going to hurt you. We are safe." She pulled him closer, her golden eyes blazing with desperate intensity. She looked at the cramped room, the flickering light, and then at the bunk beneath them. Confusion warred with biological imperative on her face. She gestured to the bed, then to herself, then to him. Her translator whined, calibrated, and finally found the syntax it was looking for. She locked eyes with him and spoke, her voice raspy but imperious. "Let me rest in your bed. And now I am obliged to warm your bed." Jace froze. He blinked. "Excuse me." He looked around the room, waiting for a hidden camera. Was this a joke? He had just saved a fugitive alien diplomat from a military hit squad, flown into a gravity storm, and now she was propositioning him? "Lady, I am flattered, really, but this is hardly the time for—" "Confirmed." Moth's voice spoke from the wall console. The screen lit up, displaying a complex, rotating glyph that looked like two spiraling flames intertwining. "Verbal contract recognized under the Galactic Asylum Act. Section 8. The right of thermal bond has been invoked and accepted." "Accepted?" Jace squeaked. "I did not accept anything." "You provided the sanctuary," Moth said. She offered the exchange. "You are currently occupying the designated sanctuary space. The contract is sealed. Congratulations, Jace. You are now legally bonded." "Bonded? Bonded how? Like marriage? Like survival?" The woman gasped. She collapsed back onto the mattress, her body arching in a spasm of pain. The light in her veins began to dim, flickering out like a dying bulb. She shook violently, her teeth chattering with a sound like cracking ice. "Cold," she whispered. Her translation software was smoothing out, though still stilted. "My system unthreads the slip space. It tears the nerves. Need, anchor." She reached for him again, her hand trembling. "Need heat, living heat, or I die." Jace looked at her. The arrogance was gone from her face, replaced by naked terror. She wasn't flirting. She was crashing. Her biology was reacting to the trauma of whatever travel she had endured, and her body was shutting down. Jace Calder was a thief, a liar, and a bad pilot. But he was not a monster. He cursed softly. "Fine, fine. What do I do?" "Contact," she chattered. "Skin. Pulse. Do not let go." Jace hesitated for 1 second, looking at the door as if he could run away from the sheer awkwardness of the situation. Then he sighed, kicked off his boots, and climbed into the bunk beside her. The moment he touched her, he gasped. She was burning, yet she felt like ice. It was a paradox of sensation. She curled into him immediately, instinct taking over. She wrapped her limbs around him, pressing her face into the crook of his neck. "This is strictly medical," Jace said to the ceiling, his voice an octave higher than usual. "Strictly medical. Moth, put that in the log." "Noted," Moth replied, adjusting cabin temperature to romance-optimized setting. "It is not romance," Jace hissed. The lights dimmed to a soft amber. Smooth jazz began to play from the speakers. "Turn that off," Jace yelled. The music cut, but the amber light remained. Jace lay rigid, his hands hovering over her back, unsure where to put them. The woman, Lyris. He remembered the name flashing on the medical scan, shivered violently against him. She smelled of ozone and something sweet, like crushed night-blooming flowers. The violet veins in her neck pulsed against his skin. He could feel her heartbeat. It was fast, a frantic flutter compared to his own steady thud. "Hold." "Me," she commanded, her voice weak. Jace lowered his arms and wrapped them around her. He pulled her tight, sharing his body heat. It felt intimate. Too intimate. He could feel the curve of her spine, the softness of her hair against his chin, the desperate strength in her grip. His own body, traitorous and human, reacted with a surge of adrenaline and, to his horror, attraction. He squeezed his eyes shut. "Think about taxes," he told himself. "Think about the hull breach. Think about the price of scrap metal. The mating banner is insufficient," Lyris murmured, tugging at the thin thermal blanket Jace had pulled over them. "It is a blanket," Jace corrected through gritted teeth. "Not a mating banner. It serves the same purpose," she mumbled, burrowing deeper into his chest. "Your ownership drum. It beats fast." "My heart," Jace said. "It is my heart, and it is beating fast because we are being shot at." As if on cue, the ship violently lurched to the side. The metal groaned, a high-pitched scream of tearing steel. "Hull breach in Sector 4, Moth announced calmly. "The patrol has entered the storm radius. They are tracking our thermal signature. Suggestion, run." Jace scrambled to get up, but Lyris held him fast. "No," she whispered. "Not yet. I am not knit together. If I do not fly this ship, we are both dead," Jace snapped. He peeled her arms off him, though it felt like tearing Velcro. "Stay here. Keep warm. I have to get us out of here." He rolled out of the bunk, stumbling as the ship pitched. He grabbed the wall for support and threw himself into the pilot's chair, which was swiveled to face the console in the corner of the small cabin. He didn't have time to get to the bridge. He had to fly from the auxiliary station. "Moth, give me control. Transferring." Jace's hands flew over the keypad. On the small monitor, he saw 3 red dots closing in through the swirling gray chaos of the gravity storm. They were sleek, predatory shapes, hunting him down. "They are too fast," Jace muttered. "We can't outrun them in sublight." "Then we jump," Lyris said. Jace glanced back. She was sitting up in the bunk, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a royal cape. Her eyes were still glassy, but the shaking had stopped. "We can't jump in a gravity storm," Jace said. "The computer can't calculate a vector. We'd end up inside a star. Do not use the computer," she said. "Use the needle." Jace froze. "The needle? That is a spacer myth, a tear in slip space. Ships go in. They don't come out. They do if they know the song," she said enigmatically. Jace looked at the sensor screen. A missile lock warning flashed crimson. He had 3 seconds. Myth or death. He chose the myth. Moth. Dump the safety protocols. Override the nav computer. "We are doing a blind jump. Jace, I am obligated to inform you that this will void your warranty," Moth said. "Do it!" Jace slammed the throttle forward and punched the hyperdrive engagement. The universe did not stretch into star lines. It shattered. The Moth screamed as it was ripped from normal space and thrown into the chaotic underbelly of the dimension. The needle was not a clean tunnel of blue light. It was a kaleidoscope of broken glass and screaming colors. Inside the cabin, gravity vanished. Jace grabbed the console. Lyris gasped. And then, the walls of the ship seemed to dissolve. It was not a hull breach. It was a memory bleed. The unstable slip space was conducting Lyris's neural energy and projecting it onto reality. Jace was no longer in his ship. He was standing in a vast circular chamber made of white marble. The air smelled of expensive perfume and cold stone. A man stood at a podium in the center, A handsome human with a winning smile and eyes that looked like shark glass. He was speaking about peace, about unity, about the necessity of order. Beside him, Jace saw Lyris, but she was dressed in pristine white robes, standing tall and proud. She was holding a data crystal. Then, the scene shifted. Violence, sharp and sudden. The smiling man leaned down to a subordinate. "Remove the witnesses," the man's voice echoed, not in Jace's ears, but in his mind. "Start with the Vera diplomat. Make it look like a salvage accident." The vision fractured. Jace saw an explosion. He saw Lyris running. He saw her pod launching. Then, reality snapped back with the force of a physical blow. Jace slammed into his control panel. The moth shuddered one last time and spewed them out of slip space. The viewport cleared. They were no longer in the Kestrel belt. Below them spun a dirty brown-green planet ringed by orbital trash and neon-lit stations. "Hollow key," Jace wheezed, wiping blood from his nose. "We made it." He spun the chair around. Lyris was slumped against the wall, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. She looked exhausted, but the violet light in her veins was steady now. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw intelligence and calculation behind the fear. "You saw it," she said. It was not a question. "I saw a Senate chamber," Jace said slowly. "I saw the peace minister." Lyris closed her eyes. "Who are you?" Jace asked, his voice low. "You are not just a refugee." "No," she whispered. Jace stood up, his legs shaky. He walked over to the wall screen. "Moth, give me the local news feed." The screen flickered to life. The audio crackled with the chaotic energy of Hollow Key's pirate broadcasts. But one image dominated every channel. It was a high-resolution holographic rotation of Lyris's face. Beneath it, in bold, flashing red letters, was a single word: traitor. The news anchor's voice was smooth and deadly. Lyris Vera, former diplomat, wanted for the assassination of 3 senators and the theft of state secrets. Consider armed and extremely dangerous. A bounty of 50 million credits has been placed on her head. Any vessel found harboring this fugitive will be designated an enemy of the Interstellar Compact and fired upon without warning. Jace stared at the screen. 50 million credits. Enough to buy his own moon. Enough to fix his ship 1,000 times over. He looked at the bounty. Then he looked at Lyris. She did not beg. She did not cry. She met his gaze with her chin held high, waiting for him to do the math. "Well," Moth broke the silence, its voice chirpy and bright. "On the upside, Jace, you are finally famous. On the downside, every mercenary within 1,000 light years is about to knock on our door. Shall I put the kettle on?" Jace looked at the girl who had warmed his bed and the warrant that demanded her blood. He realized with a sinking feeling that his bad luck had just turned into a catastrophe. "We are in so much trouble," Jace whispered. Lyris looked at him, her golden eyes dark. "We are." The ship drifted toward the smog-choked docks of the outlaw port, carrying a broke pilot, a hunted diplomat, and a lie that was about to set the galaxy on fire. Hollow Key smelled of rust, frying oil, and desperate ambition. It was a sprawling subterranean tumor of a city carved into the side of a rogue asteroid, where the laws of the Interstellar Compact were treated as polite suggestions rather than rules. For a man like Jace Calder, it should have been a haven. Instead, it felt like a trap, like Jace stood on the docking clamp of the Moth, looking down at the grimy durasteel plating of the pier. He had his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Inside was a change of clothes, a half-charged blaster, and enough credits to buy a ticket on a freighter going anywhere but here. He turned to Lyris. She stood in the airlock, wrapped in one of his oversized flight jackets. The sleeves rolled up to accommodate her slender arms. Her fox-like ears were flattened against her skull, and the violet bioluminescence in her neck was dim, pulsing with a slow, anxious rhythm. "This is where we part ways," Jace said, forcing his voice to be hard. "I saved your life. You warmed my bed. We are even. I can't have the entire compact military hunting me. Lyris, I am a salvage pilot, not a revolutionary." Lyris looked at him, her golden eyes unblinking. "It is not that simple." "Jace, it is exactly that simple." Jace insisted. "You walk that way, into the shadows. I walk this way, to the nearest bar. We never see each other again. Good luck with the treason." He turned and marched down the ramp, his boots clanging on the metal. He made it exactly 10 steps before his datapad buzzed against his hip. Then the overhead speakers of the dock screeched to life. "Attention! Docking Bay 4. A computerized voice boomed. "Vessel Moth identified. Captain Jace Calder identified. Status update. Bonded Harborer." Jace froze. He looked at his datapad. A red icon was flashing on his profile, a symbol that looked like 2 hands clasped over a flame. "What is that?" Jace yelled, spinning around to face the ship. Lyris walked down the ramp, her expression grim. "It is the oath," she said quietly. "The bedwarm right is not just a physiological necessity. It is a legal status. When the Moth's AI registered it, the update was pushed to the local harbor network." "And what does bonded harborer mean?" Jace asked, though he already knew he was not going to like the answer. "It means," a voice called out from the shadows of a nearby cargo container, "that you are part of the package, Flyboy." Jace turned. 3 dock workers were standing there, holding heavy wrenches and looking at him with hungry eyes. They weren't looking at him like a person. They were looking at him like a lottery ticket. "The bounty says 50 million for the girl," the lead worker grunted, tapping a pipe against his palm. "But it says the harborer is worth a cool 5 million as an accessory. And since you are bonded, we can't sell her without selling you. It's a buy one, get one free special." Jace looked at Lyris. "You have got to be kidding me." "I told you," Lyris said, stepping up beside him. "The oath is mutual responsibility, soon you cannot discard me. The bond ties our legal identities until it is formally severed." "How do we sever it?" Jace hissed, eyeing the approaching thugs. "A ritual of separation," Lyris replied calmly. "It requires a high priest and a public witness in a sanctified court." Jace laughed, a short, hysterical bark. "Great. I will just check the directory for a high priest in a pirate port." The lead worker lunged. Jace didn't think. He reacted. He threw his duffel bag into the man's face and grabbed Lyris's hand. "Run!" They sprinted down the pier, dodging hover carts and stacks of stolen crates. The thugs shouted behind them, but they were slow. Jace knew the layout of Hollow Key better than he knew his own family history. He pulled Lyris sharp left, ducking into a narrow alley illuminated by flickering pink neon signs advertising questionable noodles. They burst out into the main market, a chaotic crush of species and noise. Steam hissed from food stalls, music thumped from underground clubs. Jace kept his grip on Lyris's hand tight. She was fast, surprisingly so, matching his stride with a fluid grace that made him feel clumsy. "We need to get to the lower levels," Jace shouted over the din. Suddenly, the crowd ahead parted. It wasn't natural. People were shoving each other aside to get away from something. 2 figures stood in the center of the walkway. They wore pristine white bodysuits that gleamed under the dirty neon lights. Their faces were covered by smooth, featureless masks. They held long, needle-thin rifles that made no sound, not even a hum. Medics. Jace breathed. Assassins, Lyris corrected. The cleanup corps. They sterilize political messes. One of the white-clad figures raised a rifle. There was no flash, no noise. A fruit stall beside Jace simply exploded into pulp as a kinetic round punched through it. Move! Jace shoved Lyris toward a maintenance vent. He kicked the grate open and they scrambled inside, tumbling down a slick metal slide that smelled of algae and recycled water. They landed in a splash of knee-deep water. They were in the old aquarium tunnels. Hollow Key had once been a luxury resort before the mining corporations went bankrupt. Now, the sightseeing tunnels were shattered ruins. The glass walls of the tunnel were cracked, but the water outside was still there, pressurized and dark. Drifting through the black water were millions of microjellies, bioluminescent creatures that glowed like tiny blue stars. They swirled in patterns, casting a ghostly, shifting light over Jace and Lyris. Lyris stopped, staring at the jellies. For a second, the terror on her face vanished, replaced by wonder. They look like the drift seeds of my homeworld, she whispered. They look like a good place to hide, Jace said, pulling her forward. The medics won't use heavy thermal scopes down here. The water density messes with their sensors. They waded through the water, the blue light reflecting off the sweat on their faces. The silence of the tunnel was heavy, broken only by the distant groaning of the station's metal frame. We cannot run forever, Lyris said, her voice echoing softly. Jace, if they catch us, tell them you were coerced. Tell them I mind-wiped you. Don't be stupid, Jace muttered, checking behind them. I am being logical. You are a pilot. You have value to them. I am the liability. You are a person, Jace said, stopping to look at her. And apparently, I am your ride. We stick together until I find a way to break this stupid oath without getting shot. He didn't mention that he wasn't sure he wanted to leave her behind anymore. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold pit of fear in his stomach. But beneath that was something else. A protective instinct he hadn't used in years. They found a way up through a service hatch that led to the transient district, a honeycomb of cheap capsule motels stacked like coffins. Jace hacked the door of an empty unit. It was barely big enough for the bed, bathed in the harsh glow of a single strip light. Jace locked the door and slumped against it, sliding down to the floor. Lyris sat on the edge of the mattress. She was shivering again. The run through the cold water had sapped her heat. The violet veins in her neck were flickering erratically, and her skin had taken on a gray, ashy tone. It is happening again, she whispered, the unthreading. Jace looked up. He saw her hands shaking uncontrollably. Her teeth clicked together. It wasn't just cold. It was a biological crash. Her species needed thermal anchoring to stabilize their nervous systems after high-stress events. You need the bed, Jace said quietly. I need the warmth, she stammered. The proximity. Jace stood up. He felt the exhaustion in his bones, but he also felt the strange magnetic pull of the bond. It wasn't magic. It was empathy. He took off his wet jacket and tossed it in the corner. Okay, he said. He sat on the bed. Lyris looked at him, her eyes wide and fearful. She was a diplomat, a woman of high status, used to command. Now she was reduced to begging for body heat from a broke scavenger in a dirty motel. I do not wish to be a burden, she said, her voice trembling. You are not a burden, Jace said. But we need to get one thing straight. He reached out and took her hands. They were freezing. I am doing this because you need it to survive, Jace said, his voice steady. And I am doing it because I want to help you, Darate. But this is your call. Always. If you want me to stop, I stop. If you want me to leave, I leave. I am not taking what isn't given. Do you understand? Lyra stared at him. She searched his face, looking for the deception she was used to seeing in the Senate. She found only tired honesty. I understand, she whispered. Thank you. Jace. She moved first. She lay back, pulling him down with her. They curled together under the thin motel blanket. The moment their bodies touched, the reaction was instantaneous. The heat flared between them, not just physical warmth, but a bioelectric resonance that made Jace's breath hitch. Lyris let out a long, ragged sigh as the shivering began to subside. She buried her face in his chest. Jace wrapped his arms around her, his chin resting on the top of her head. It was intimate in a way that terrified him. It was easier to be shot at than to be this close to someone. So, Jace whispered into the dark, trying to break the tension. Is this how all diplomatic negotiations start? Because if so, I really missed my calling in politics. Lyris let out a small, wet laugh against his shirt. You would be terrible at politics. You are too honest, and you dress like a disaster. Hey, this jacket is vintage. They lay in silence for a while, the cheap room humming around them. The fear of the chase receded, replaced by a fragile peace. Chase, Lyris said softly. The reason they are hunting me, it is not just what I saw, it is what I carry. Jace stiffened. You have something on you? She took his hand and guided it to the base of her neck, just below her hairline. Under the skin, he felt a hard, warm lump, a crystal. It is a truth core, she said. A crystalline data seed. It contains the private communications of the peace minister. It proves he orchestrated the attacks on the border colonies himself. He created a false flag war to justify the Emergency Powers Act. Jace's blood ran cold. That is enough to topple the government, or get us killed, Lyris said. But there is a complication. The core is alive. It bonded to my bioelectric pattern when I swallowed the initial key. If anyone tries to cut it out forcibly, it will detect the trauma and erase itself. And what happens to you if it erases itself? Jace asked. It draws the energy from my nervous system to perform the wipe, she said simply. It will kill me. Jace tightened his hold on her. So we can't take it out, and we can't give it up. We can decode it, Lyris said. If we can unlock the projection files, we can broadcast them. But the encryption is archaic. I need a cryptographer. I know a guy. Jace sighed. Of course I know a guy. Dr. Sato Ven. He runs a black market data mill 3 sectors over. He is a slime ball, but he is the best. Then we must find him, Lyris said. We will, Jace promised. But first, you need to stop shaking. He held her until she slept. He stayed awake, watching the shadows move on the ceiling, realizing that he was no longer just a pilot. He was a guardian. Dr. Sato Ven's lab was a chaotic mess of server towers and cooling fans located in the back of a noodle shop. Ven himself was a small, nervous man with cybernetic implants in his fingers that clicked when he typed. He looked at the scan of Lyris's neck on his monitor and whistled. That is beautiful work, Ven said, his mechanical fingers twitching. High-density storage, bio-locked. I haven't seen this kind of encryption since the Shadow Wars. Can you crack it? Jace asked, leaning against the doorframe, his hand near his blaster. Ven smirked. Is the vacuum of space cold? Of course I can crack it, but it will cost you. We don't have money, Lyris said, standing tall despite her exhaustion. But once this information is public, the Senate will be in debt to whoever preserved it. IOUs from a dead government don't buy server space, Ven said. However, I might be willing to do it for a trade. What trade? Jace asked, eyes narrowing. Ven typed a command. The door behind Jace slammed shut. The magnetic locks engaged with a heavy thud. "The bounty on her head," Ven said, his smile widening. "And the pardon on mine. I sent a ping to the local garrison 10 minutes ago. They are already on the roof." Jace didn't hesitate. He drew his blaster and fired at the server tower next to Ven. Sparks showered the room, and the cooling system screamed. Ven shrieked, ducking under his desk. "You are destroying my overhead." Jace grabbed a heavy chair and smashed it through the glass partition of the office. "Out the back!" he yelled to Lyris. They scrambled through the shattered window, dropping into the alley just as the front door of the shop was blown off its hinges. Armored troopers poured in. Jace and Lyris ran for the Moth, which Jace had parked in a scrapyard canyon on the edge of the city to avoid fees. "Moth!" Jace screamed into his comms. "Hot start! We have company!" "I have taken the liberty of pre-warming the engines," Moth replied dryly. "I assumed your negotiation would end in violence. It usually does." They sprinted up the ramp as laser fire chewed up the ground around their heels. Jace threw himself into the pilot seat. "Go! Punch it!" The Moth roared into the sky, weaving between the rusted skeletons of dead capital ships that littered the canyon. Behind them, 3 patrol interceptors screamed in pursuit. "They are locking missiles," Moth warned. Jace yanked the yoke hard to the right, scraping the belly of the Moth against a derelict freighter. "I can't shake them. They have better thrusters." "Use the gravity plating," Lyris shouted from the co-pilot seat. "What?" "The gravity plating on the dead ships. Reroute our artificial gravity projector to push off them." "That is insane," Jace yelled. "Moth, do it!" "Rerouting," Moth said. "Hold on to your internal organs." The Moth's gravity drive pulsed. Instead of pulling them down, it pushed violently against the massive hull of the dead freighter next to them. The ship shot sideways with sickening speed, dodging a volley of missiles that slammed into the scrap metal, exploding in balls of fire. Jace laughed, a wild, terrified sound. "It worked." "We are approaching the sector gate," Moth said. "It is sealed. We do not have clearance." Lyris leaned forward. "Open a channel." Jace toggled the comms. "You are going to talk to them, trust me," she said. She pressed the transmit button. Her voice changed. It wasn't the voice of the scared refugee or the intimate whisper in the dark. It was the voice of a ruler. "This is High Diplomat Lyris Vera of the Inner Council," she commanded. "Override code Alpha 9 Victor. Open the gate immediately or face a tribunal for obstructing a Senate directive." There was a pause. Then, the massive blast doors of the sector gate groaned and began to slide open. Clearance code accepted. A confused traffic controller stammered over the radio. "Apologies, High Diplomat. We did not know." Jace punched the thrusters, shooting through the gap before the controller could change his mind. They blasted into the open darkness of deep space, leaving Hollow Key and the patrol ships behind. Jace slumped in his chair, exhaling a breath he felt like he'd been holding for an hour. "That," he said, looking at Lyris, "was impressive." "It was a bluff," Lyris said, her shoulders slumping. "That code expired 3 years ago. I gambled that they were too low level to know the difference." They drifted in silence for a moment as the ship's autopilot took over. The adrenaline crash was hitting them both hard. "You okay?" Jace asked. Lyris looked at him. Her eyes were bright, her chest heaving. "No. I am terrified, and me too." She reached across the console and took his hand. The touch was electric. After the chase, the fear, and the proximity, the barrier between them felt paper-thin. The bed-warm sessions. Jace started, his voice rough. "We need to stabilize," Lyris said softly. They went back to the cabin, This time, there was no hesitation. They stripped off their outer layers and climbed into the bunk. But the dynamic had shifted. It wasn't just medical anymore. Jace pulled her close, and Lyris pressed her body against his with a desperation that had nothing to do with the cold. When she looked up at him, her face inches from his, Jace felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He wanted to kiss her. He could see in her eyes that she wanted it too. The desire was sharp, tangled with the fear of death they had just outrun. "Jace," she whispered, her hand tracing the line of his jaw. "We can't," Jace said, though he didn't pull away. "Not while you're vulnerable. Not while the oath is making you feel like you have to." "It is not the oath," Lyris said fiercely. "It's the adrenaline," Jace countered gently. "Let's just rest." He held her tight, burying his face in her hair. It took everything he had not to cross that line, but he knew that if he did, he couldn't go back. The next morning, Jace was in the galley, angrily stabbing at a packet of dehydrated eggs. "Scheduled alert," Moth's voice chirped through the speakers. "It is time for bond maintenance. Please proceed to the designated cuddling zone. I have prepared a playlist of whale songs." "I am going to delete your language drive," Jace yelled at the ceiling. "I am going to replace you with a toaster." Lyris walked in, looking refreshed. She wore one of Jace's spare shirts, which hung on her like a dress. She watched him screaming at the ceiling with a serious expression. "Jace," she asked. "What?" Jace snapped, then softened. "Sorry. The ship is annoying me." "Is yelling at invisible entities a human courtship ritual?" she asked, completely deadpan. Jace stared at her. "No." "Why?" "Because you seem very passionate about it." Jace groaned, rubbing his face. She was joking. She was actually making a joke. "Eat your eggs. Diplomat." They sat together, the silence comfortable for the first time. But the peace was shattered when the main console beeped. "Incoming transmission," Moth said. "Priority 1. Encryption match. Ven's data signature." "Ven?" Jace frowned. "He betrayed us. He sent a parting gift," Moth said, "or a threat." On the screen, a text file scrolled. It wasn't the decoded core. It was a list. Subject: Jace Calder, Homeworld, Orem. Next of kin: Mara Calder, sister. Elias Calder, nephew. Below the names was a set of coordinates, a targeting solution, and a message from Ven. "I sold the girl's location to the Compact. I sold your identity to the Debt Guild. And just to be safe, I sold your family's location to the Peace Minister's Black Ops division. You have nowhere to run. Jace, they know who you are. They know who you love." Jace stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face. His sister, his nephew. They were innocent. They were on a farm on Orem, 1,000,000 miles away from this mess. "He is going to kill them," Jace whispered. "Because of me." He stood up, knocking his chair over. He gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. "I have to go back. I have to get them." "We cannot go back," Lyris said, her voice quiet. "It is a trap. They want you to go there so they can catch us." "I don't care," Jace roared, spinning on her. "That is my family, and this is the fate of the galaxy," Lyris shouted back. They stared at each other, the anger breathing between them. Then Lyris's expression crumpled. She looked down at the console, at the list of names. "It was not just Ven," she said softly. "What?" "The ambush at the dock. The way the medics knew exactly where we were. Ven betrayed us later, but someone knew we were coming to Hollow Key before we even arrived." She looked up at Jace, tears standing in her golden eyes. "I sent a coded signal to my diplomatic circle when we first crashed. To my mentor, I thought, I thought she would send help. Jace looked at her. You think your own people sold you out? I think, Lyris said, her voice breaking, that the traitor is not just in the Senate. I think she is the one who raised me. And if she knows I am alive, she will not stop until she buries me. Jace looked at the coordinates of his sister's home, and then at the woman who had just realized she was an orphan in a universe that wanted her dead. He reached out and took her hand. We are going to save them, Jace said grimly. We are going to save my family. And then we are going to burn your mentor's career to the ground. How? Lyris asked. Jace looked at the stars. We stop running. We start fighting. The slip space between Hollow Key and the Irion system was not empty. It was alive, and it was angry. The moth shuddered violently as it tore through the membrane of the dimension, the hull groaning under the pressure of non-Euclidean physics. Outside the viewport, the usual swirling indigo tunnel of hyperspace had turned a sickly, bruising purple. Arcs of static electricity danced across the glass. But they did not sound like sparks. They sounded like voices. It is the singing static, Jace said, his hands white-knuckled on the yoke. I have only heard about this in deep spacer bars. It is a subspace anomaly. It reads your neural patterns and plays them back to you. I am detecting multiple unauthorized audio inputs, Moth announced, its voice tight with processing strain. Jace, your mother is on Channel 4 asking about your credit score. Your flight instructor is on Channel 5 screaming that you are too low. And there is a chorus of creditors singing in harmony on the tactical frequency. Block it, Jace yelled, sweat stinging his eyes. I cannot block it, Moth replied. It is bypassing the comms array. It is projecting directly into the cabin atmosphere. The voices grew louder. They were not just noise. They were Jace's insecurities weaponized. He heard his sister's voice, Mara, crying out for help, blaming him for bringing death to her doorstep. He heard his own voice from 10 years ago, promising he would make something of himself, laughing cruelly at the failure he had become. Turn around, the voices whispered. Just let go of the stick. Sleep. It is easier to sleep. Jace's eyes glazed over. His grip on the controls slackened. The ship began to drift, listing dangerously toward the chaotic edge of the slipstream where matter disintegrated. Jace! The sharp command cut through the noise. Lyris was there, unbuckling from the co-pilot seat. She did not look at the swirling madness outside. She looked only at him. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. Her skin was warm, the violet bioluminescence in her neck pulsing with a steady, rhythmic beat. Look at me, she ordered. Do not listen to the ghosts. They are just echoes. They are loud, Jace gasped, trembling. They are so loud. Anchor to me, Lyris said. She took his hand and placed it flat against her chest, right over her heart. It was beating strong and fast, a physical thud against his palm that was more real than the whispers in his head. Feel that? She asked. That is real. That is now. Breathe with it. She inhaled deeply, exaggerating the motion. Jace mimicked her, his breath hitching. In, Lyris commanded softly. Out. Match my rhythm. You are not in the past. You are not with your failures. You are here, on the moth, with me. Jace focused on the beat of her heart. It was a drum in the chaos. Slowly, the screaming voices faded into background radiation. The purple fog outside seemed less like a monster and more like weather. He blinked, the glaze leaving his eyes. I am back, he whispered. Good, Lyris said, not letting go of his hand. Keep the rhythm. I will be your anchor. She stayed there, half standing over him, her hand covering his on the controls, until the purple turbulence smoothed out into the black velvet of real space. Irion was a ghost world. It was a moon composed almost entirely of silicate ice and frozen gases, giving the surface a translucent, glass-like appearance. Beneath the ice, geothermal vents glowed with eerie blue and green light, creating the illusion that the entire moon was lit from within by trapped auroras. The moth touched down on a ridge overlooking the ruins of the old parliament. It was a massive dome structure, half buried in a drift of diamond dust snow. Once, it had been a summer retreat for the Senate. Now, it looked like a tomb. "Are you sure he is here?" Jace asked him, pulling on his thermal parka. "The sensors are reading 0 life signs." "Malus Row does not produce life signs," Lyris said, adjusting the seals on her own suit. "He has spent the last decade erasing himself from every database in the compact. If we could scan him, he would already be dead." They trudged through the snow, the wind howling around them. The cold here was vicious, biting through their suits. But Jace found himself walking close to Lyris not just for warmth, but because the memory of her hand on his chest was still burning on his skin. They reached the airlock of the dome. It was fused shut with ice. Jace raised his laser cutter, but Lyris stopped him. "No," she said. "He will have sensors. Violence will trigger defenses." She stepped forward and placed her hand on the frozen metal. She tapped a sequence with her fingers, not a code, but a rhythm. Tap, 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 tap. A moment of silence stretched. Then, deep within the ice, machinery groaned. The frost cracked, and the heavy circular door hissed open. Inside, the dome was a cavern of shadows and holographic light. The air was stale but breathable. In the center of the vast, empty chamber sat a single chair, surrounded by banks of floating data screens. A figure sat in the chair. Or rather, a projection of a figure. It was a shifting, glitching mosaic of faces, a child, an old woman, a soldier. One step further and the automated turrets will vaporize you. A voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. It was a synthesized voice, stripped of gender and tone. "Senator Rowe," Lyris called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "I am Lyris Vera. I bring the truth core." The figure laughed, a harsh, digital sound. "Lyris Vera is dead. I read her obituary 3 weeks ago. Tragic shuttle accident. Very thorough." "I am not dead," Lyris said, stepping into the light. "I survived." "Prove it," the voice snapped. "Prove you are not a clone. Prove you are not a biological puppet sent by the peace minister to finish the job." Lyris hesitated. Then she reached up and unzipped the collar of her suit. She exposed her neck, where the violet veins were currently dim. She closed her eyes and hummed a low, discordant note. The bioluminescence flared. It rippled in a specific, complex pattern, a sequence of flashes that looked like a star chart. The holographic figure froze. The shifting faces stopped cycling, settling on the image of a tired, gray-haired man with deep lines etched into his face. "The Vera family crest," the man whispered. "Bio-encrypted. Only a blood descendant could produce that flare sequence." The hologram flickered out, and the real Malus Rowe stepped from behind a bank of servers. He looked older than his pictures, frail and consumed by paranoia. He held a pistol, but he lowered it slowly. "You should not have come," Rowe said, his voice raspy. "You are carrying a plague, girl." "I am carrying the truth," Lyris corrected. "Truth is a plague to men like the peace minister," Rowe muttered. He turned and limped toward a console. "Come, quickly." Before his satellites pick up your heat signature, Rowe brought up a map of the compact on the main screen. It was covered in red zones. You think you have discovered a conspiracy, Rowe said, typing rapidly. You think the peace minister merely staged a false flag war to gain emergency powers? That is old news. That is the surface layer. What is the depth of it? Jace asked, standing guard by the door. He is not building a dictatorship with guns, Rowe said. He is building it with compliance. He has manufactured a state of constant low-level terror. The border raids, the pirate attacks, the rumors of biological agents, it is all curated. He creates the fear, and then he offers the solution, absolute safety, in exchange for absolute surveillance. We know, Lyris said. I have the proof in the core. Rowe spun around, his eyes wild. You have proof of the event, but do you know why you were the one carrying it? Lyris frowned. Because I was the diplomatic envoy. I was the neutral party. Rowe laughed bitterly. He tapped a key. A document projected into the air. It was a list, stamped with the seal of the Inner Council, Lyris's own superiors. The title read, Asset Liquidation, Phase 2. Jace stepped forward, squinting at the text. It was a list of names, politicians, journalists, activists. And there, near the bottom, was Lyris Vera. Look at the date, Rowe said softly. Lyris looked, her breath caught in her throat. The date was 2 weeks before the mission, 2 weeks before she ever received the Truth Core. They put my name on the death list before they gave me the mission, she whispered. Exactly, Rowe said. You were never meant to deliver the evidence. You were meant to die with it. Your own circle, your mentor, your government. They signed your death warrant the moment they handed you that crystal. You were the perfect disposable container. A dead diplomat creates a martyr. A live diplomat creates a problem. Lyris staggered back as if she had been struck. She hit the wall and slid down, her legs giving out. The strength that had carried her through the gravity storm and the chase evaporated. I was disposable? She choked out. All of it. The duty, the honor, the oath. It was just a setup. She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook, but she made no sound. It was a silent, shattering grief. Jace looked at Rowe with pure venom. You could have broken that gently, old man. Time is a luxury we do not have, Rowe said, turning back to the screens. Jace knelt beside Lyris. He did not try to pull her up. He did not tell her it would be okay. He knew it wasn't okay. Her entire worldview, her identity as a servant of her people, had just been gutted. He sat on the cold floor next to her, their shoulders touching. I am here, he said quietly. I am nothing, came her muffled voice. I am a ghost. You are the ghost that refused to die, Jace said, and that makes you the most dangerous thing in the galaxy to them. He didn't try to fix her. He just sat there, a warm, solid presence in the freezing room, letting her fall apart so she could put herself back together. Suddenly, a siren screamed through the dome. The red lights on Rowe's console began to flash. Proximity alert, Rowe yelled. Thermal spikes on the ice ridge. Jace was up in a second, his blaster drawn. How did they find us? They tracked the moth's ion trail. Rowe cursed. The ceiling of the dome hissed. A bright orange point of light appeared on the reinforced glass. Then another. Then another. Heat drills, Jace shouted. They are melting through the roof. The glass shattered. Ropes dropped into the chamber, and dark, armored figures rappelled down. Mercenaries. They hit the floor with heavy thuds, their weapons raising instantly. Cover! Jace roared, grabbing Lyris by the harness of her suit and dragging her behind a heavy server bank. Rowe scrambled behind his desk as plasma bolts chewed up the floor where they had been standing. The noise was deafening, the shriek of laser fire and the explosion of shattering machinery. Jace popped up and fired 2 shots. One mercenary went down, his armor sparking, but there were too many of them. 10, maybe 12, fanning out in a tactical embrace. "We are pinned," Jace yelled, ducking as a chunk of the server bank disintegrated near his head. Lyris looked up. The tears were gone from her face, replaced by a cold, hard rage. She reached into her belt and pulled out a small silver device. "Cover your eyes," she commanded. "What? Cover them!" Jace squeezed his eyes shut. Lyris threw the device. It didn't explode. It hummed. When Jace opened his eyes, the room had gone mad. The device was a phase ribbon generator. It bent light waves in chaotic patterns. The mercenaries were firing wildly, but they weren't aiming at Jace or Lyris. They were aiming at phantom duplicates that flickered 5 feet to the left, or 3 feet in the air. The room was a hall of mirrors. "Move now!" Lyris shouted. She vaulted over the cover, moving through the optical chaos like a dancer. She didn't have a gun. She had a collapsible baton. She struck the nearest mercenary in the throat joint of his armor, dropping him. Jace followed, firing at the confused targets. The mercenaries were disoriented, shooting at shadows. "Row!" Jace yelled. "We have to go!" Row was frantically pulling a drive from his main console. "I have the partial decode. Go, get to your ship!" They fought their way to the airlock. The ice tunnel was collapsing as the heat drills from above destabilized the structure. Chunks of frozen heavy water crashed down around them. "The moth!" Jace yelled, sprinting through the snow. They scrambled up the ramp just as the mercenaries breached the outer doors. Moth fired the ship's ventral turret, scattering the attackers with a suppression volley. Jace threw himself into the pilot seat. "Get us out of here!" the moth roared, blasting off the moon's surface in a cloud of steam and snow. "Safe," Moth announced. "Though I would define safe loosely, as we are currently being tracked by a long-range destroyer." Jace engaged the cloak, a jury-rigged system that barely worked, and set a course for deep space. He spun the chair around. Lyris was sitting on the floor, holding the drive Row had given them. She plugged it into the ship's central table. "Let's see what was worth killing us for," she said. Her voice like flint, the hologram sprang to life. It was a complex web of code, biological data, and media files. "It is not just a false flag," Row said, his voice coming through the comms. He had stayed behind, sealed in his bunker deep below the dome. "I am analyzing the data now. This is a behavioral rewrite algorithm." "What does that mean?" Jace asked. "It means the peace minister is not just broadcasting propaganda," Row explained. "Look at the frequency modulations in the file. These are subliminal carrier waves embedded in the wellness broadcasts. The music, the news, the entertainment feeds. The signal targets the amygdala. It suppresses the chemical production associated with dissent and aggression." Jace stared at the spinning diagram. "He wants to drug the galaxy? He wants to rewrite loyalties like software," Lyris said, horror dawning on her face. "If this signal goes out at full strength, people will not just obey. They will lose the capacity to disobey. It is the death of free will." "We have to release this," Jace said immediately. "We dump the data. We show everyone what he is doing." "Wait," Lyris said. Jace looked at her. "Wait? What is there to wait for? Look at the simulation." Lyris pointed to a red graph. "If we pull the plug on the signal instantly, the withdrawal shock will be catastrophic. Millions of people are already attuned to the baseline signal. If we sever it without an antidote code, their nervous systems will crash. There will be riots, mass psychosis, panic deaths in the life support cities." "So we leave it on?" Jace shouted. "We let him turn people into zombies? We need a plan," Lyris shouted back. "We cannot just burn the house down because we hate the landlord. We need to find the antidote code first." "And let him win in the meantime?" Jace stepped closer to her. This is not a debate. Lyris, this is slavery, and chaos is just another form of death. Lyris stood her ground, chest heaving. You want to be the hero. Jace? Being a hero means making the hard choice, not the loud one. They stood inches apart, the air between them crackling with the argument. It was furious, terrifying, and raw. They were both right, and they both knew it. The moral weight of the galaxy was crushing them, and they were taking it out on each other. Then, the anger broke. It didn't fade, it transmuted. The intensity of the shouting matched the intensity of the adrenaline still coursing through their veins from the fight. Jace looked at Lyris, her hair messy, her eyes blazing, her face streaked with soot, and realized that the fear he felt wasn't about the conspiracy. It was about losing her. Lyris stopped speaking. She saw the shift in his eyes. She felt the shift in herself. The bed-warm oath had forced them together, but this raw, terrifying connection was something else entirely. Jace, she breathed. The distance between them vanished. Jace didn't grab her. He stepped into her space, and she met him. His hands found her waist, hers tangled in the collar of his flight suit. This isn't the oath, Jace said, his voice rough, scanning her face for any sign of hesitation. This isn't the cold. I know, Lyris whispered. Tell me to stop, Jace said. Tell me to stop and I will walk out that door. Lyris looked at him. She saw the man who had pulled her from the wreckage, who had held her through the withdrawals, who had just tried to fight an army for her. I do not want you to stop, she said clearly. I want you to be here. Not because I must, because I want to. She pulled him down to her. The kiss was desperate, a collision of survival and desire. It was the release of weeks of terror and forced restraint. Jace lifted her up, and she wrapped her legs around him, burying her face in his neck. He carried her out of the bridge, the door sliding shut on the glowing hologram of the conspiracy that could wait, for just 1 hour, while they chose each other. The next morning, the ship was quiet. Jace woke up in his bunk. For the first time, he wasn't sleeping on the edge, ready to jump up. He was entangled. Lyris was asleep on his chest, her breathing slow and deep. Her bioluminescence was a soft, steady gold, a color he hadn't seen before. He watched her for a moment, a strange lightness in his chest. He reached out to brush a strand of silver hair from her face. Good morning. Bonded partners. The AI's voice boomed through the cabin at maximum volume. Jace flinched so hard he nearly fell out of the bed. Lyris shot up, grabbing a pillow and wielding it like a weapon. Current physiological metrics indicate a 99% reduction in stress levels, Moth announced cheerfully. To celebrate, I am playing the post-coital bonding anthem from the Hydron star cluster. A cacophony of screeching bagpipes and rhythmic thumping began to blast from the speakers. Moth, Jace roared, covering his ears. Turn it off, I swear I will space you. I am merely facilitating emotional wellness. Moth countered, increasing the volume. Lyris stared at the speaker, then at Jace's red, furious face. Her shoulders started to shake. She put a hand over her mouth. Are you laughing? Jace asked, incredulous. I am trying not to. She gasped. But the bagpipes. She let out a sound, a genuine bell-clear laugh. It was the first time Jace had heard it. It transformed her face, making her look younger, lighter, free of the weight she carried. Jace looked at her, and his annoyance evaporated. He started laughing too. They sat in the tangled sheets, laughing while the alien bagpipes screamed, two fugitives finding a moment of joy in the dark. We have an incoming transmission, Moth said, cutting the music abruptly. It is Malus Row. They sobered up instantly. Jace pulled on his pants and Lyris threw on a robe. They rushed to the bridge. Ro's face appeared on the screen. He looked frantic. The bunker behind him was shaking. The dust was falling from the ceiling. They found the lower levels, Ro said, coughing. The mercenaries. They have a bunker buster. Ro, get out of there, Jace yelled. We can come back. No time, Ro said. Listen to me. The antidote code. It is not just data. It is a frequency key. You need to broadcast it from a central hub. The only transmitter strong enough is the Halcyon Crown. The summit station? Lyra said. That is a fortress. It is the only way, Ro said. You must... He stopped. He looked off screen. A high-pitched whine filled the audio feed. Ro looked back at the camera. He didn't look afraid anymore. He looked tired. Do not let them win, he whispered. A small, sleek drone drifted into the frame behind him. It hovered for a second, its red eye glowing. No! Lyra screamed. The feed cut to static. The silence on the bridge of the Moth was absolute. Jace stared at the gray noise on the screen. Lyra stood frozen, her hand reaching out toward the dead image. They killed him, she whispered. He was buried under a mile of ice, and they still reached him. Jace walked over and placed his hands on her shoulders. He turned her away from the screen. We know where to go, he said, his voice hard as steel. Halcyon Crown. We will never make it, Lyra said, her voice shaking. It is a suicide run. Maybe, Jace said. He looked at the star map, then back at her. But we are not running anymore. Cairnspire did not look like a place where revolutions began. It looked like a chandelier dropped from heaven, caught by the clouds before it could hit the ground. The floating city was a marvel of anti-gravity engineering, a spiraling tower of white stone and glass hovering 10,000 feet above the toxic surface of the industrial planet below. To the wealthy citizens of the Interstellar Compact, it was a playground of high art and higher politics. To Jace Calder, looking at it through the cockpit glass of the Moth, it looked like a very expensive cage. We are docking in the lower maintenance ring, Jace said, guiding the ship into a bay that smelled of burning refuse and ozone. We need to find the Lantern Line. If Malus Ro was right, they are the only journalists left with enough spine to broadcast the antidote code. And to do that, Lyra said, checking the charge on her phase ribbon emitter, we need a frequency key. And the only place to get a frequency key powerful enough to override the station's jammers is the governor's gala. Jace looked at her. She was not wearing her flight suit. She was wearing a gown she had fabricated using the ship's industrial printer. It was a shimmering liquid silver material that moved like water over her skin. It covered her from neck to toe, yet somehow made her look more naked than if she were wearing nothing. Her fox-like ears were adorned with small cuffs of diamond glass. She looked terrifyingly royal. You are walking into a room full of people who think you are a terrorist, Jace said. I am walking into a room full of people who are desperate for drama, Lyris corrected. They will not shoot me. They will stare at me. And while they are staring, I will access the governor's private server and steal the key. And what am I doing? Jace asked. You, Moth interrupted, the AI's voice brimming with malicious delight, are providing security, and looking barely adequate while doing so. Jace looked down at himself. He was wearing a tuxedo that the AI had synthesized. It was tight in the shoulders and felt strangely stiff. Why does this suit feel like it is made of cardboard? Jace complained, tugging at the collar. I have reinforced the weave with ballistic fibers, Moth explained. Also, I have taken the liberty of adjusting the style to match current diplomatic trends. Jace looked in the mirror. The suit had suddenly grown a large, frilly cravat that was slowly changing color from blue to pink. Moth, Jace yelled. Change it back! I look like a radioactive pigeon. I think it adds a certain softness to your rugged incompetence, Moth said. Fix it, or I will use a magnet on your hard drive. The cravat retracted with a sullen hiss, returning to a standard black tie. Lyris touched Jace's arm. Her hand was steady, but Jace could feel the tension vibrating in her fingertips. We have 1 hour, she said. Get in. Get the key. Get out. If we are caught, the Lantern Line will never get the code, and the Peace Minister wins. The Governor's Gala was held in the Cloud Garden, a massive, transparent dome at the very apex of the spire. Inside, gravity was set to 80%, allowing the guests to move with an elegant, floating grace. Waiters drifted by with trays of blue champagne. The air smelled of money, a mix of rare orchids and ozone. When Lyris walked in, the room went silent. The music, a live string quartet playing on a floating platform, faltered. 300 heads turned. Senators, guild leaders, and media moguls stared at the woman whose face had been plastered on every bounty board in the sector. Lyris did not hide. She did not skulk. She lifted her chin, her golden eyes sweeping the room with a look of bored disdain. She walked as if she owned the floor, the air, and the very gravity that held them up. Is that her? A woman whispered near Jace. I thought she was dead, a man replied. She looks unbothered, the woman said, sounding almost offended. Jace walked a step behind her, his hand hovering near the hidden blaster in his jacket. He felt exposed. He was a salvage pilot. He belonged in grease-stained coveralls, not a tuxedo surrounded by people whose shoes cost more than his ship. Keep moving, Jace murmured. Everyone is looking at us. Let them look, Lyris said, her voice low and calm. Confusion is our armor. They do not know if I am a fugitive or if I have been secretly pardoned. In high society, confidence is often mistaken for innocence. She navigated the crowd like a shark moving through a school of fish. She nodded to a senator who looked like he was about to faint. She plucked a drink from a passing tray and took a sip, her eyes never leaving the far end of the room where the governor's private dais sat. Then, a voice cut through the murmur. Lyris. Jace stiffened. A woman stepped out of the crowd. She was tall, draped in robes of deep crimson velvet. Her hair was white, coiled in intricate braids atop her head. She had a face that was beautiful but hard, like a statue carved from granite. Ambassador Sarai Keth, Lyris whispered. Her mentor. The woman Lyris had hoped would save them, the woman who had likely sold them out. Lyris smiled. It was a cold, sharp thing. Ambassador, it has been a long time. Sarai did not smile. She looked at Lyris with an expression that Jace couldn't place. It wasn't hate. It was sadness. I was told you were dead, Sarai said softly. The reports were exaggerated, Lyris replied. As you can see, Sarai stepped closer, entering their personal space. Her eyes flicked to Jace, dismissing him instantly as hired muscle, then returned to Lyris. You should not be here, Sarai murmured. It is dangerous. I am used to danger, Lyris said. I have spent the last 3 weeks dodging assassins sent by the Peace Minister. Or was it you who signed the order, Sarai? Sarai didn't flinch. She sighed, a long, weary sound. Come with me. We cannot talk here. She turned and walked toward a secluded balcony overlooking the night sky. Lyris hesitated, then followed. Jace stayed close, his muscles coiled tight. On the balcony, the wind was blocked by an energy shield, leaving the air still and silent. Below them, the lights of the city stretched out into the dark. Why Sarai? Lyris asked, dropping the mask of the arrogant aristocrat. Why did you do it? You taught me that truth was the foundation of diplomacy. Truth is a luxury for peacetime, Sarai said, looking out at the stars. And we have not been at peace for 100 years. Lyris, the border wars, the resource conflicts. We have been bleeding ourselves dry. So you decided to drug the galaxy into submission? Lyris snapped. The algorithm in the truth core, it removes free will. It removes the impulse for violence. Sarai turned, her eyes blazing with fanatic intensity. It suppresses the chemical triggers for aggression. Imagine it. Lyris, a galaxy where war is physically impossible, where riots never happen, where fathers do not die in trenches over scrap metal. Is that not worth the price of a little spirited debate? It is not debate you are killing, Lyris said, her voice shaking with rage. It is humanity. It is the ability to choose. You are making them pets. I am making them safe, Sarai countered, and I am trying to save you. She reached out, as if to touch Lyris's arm. Lyris stepped back. The Peace Minister is going to announce the activation of the algorithm in 2 days, Sarai said, and he needs closure on the Vera incident. They have a body double, Lyris, a poor girl from the Undercity, surgically altered to look like you. They are going to execute her live on the broadcast, to seal the narrative, to show that chaos has been defeated. Lyris went pale. They are going to kill an innocent woman just to use her face. For the greater good, Sarai said. But you can survive. Give me the core. Surrender. I can arrange a quiet exile. You can live. Lyris looked at her mentor. She saw the fear behind the conviction. She saw a woman who had compromised so much that she had nothing left but the lie. No, Lyris said. Sarai's face hardened. Then I cannot help you. She reached for a panic button on her wrist. Jace moved. He didn't draw his blaster. He drew a stun baton he had swiped from a guard at the door. He lunged forward and jammed it into the energy shield generator on the balcony wall. The shield flickered and died. The wind from 10,000 feet up roared into the space, howling like a banshee. Sarai stumbled back, shielding her eyes. Grab the key, Jace yelled over the wind. Lyris didn't hesitate. She grabbed Sarai's wrist, not to hurt her, but to rip the datapad from her hand. Sarai shrieked, clawing at Lyris, but Jace stepped between them, shoving the ambassador back. Go! Jace shouted. He grabbed Lyris and they ran back into the gala. But the subtle approach was over. Security alarms were blaring. The elegant guests were screaming and scattering. The exits are sealed, Moth yelled in Jace's earpiece. Security drones are deploying from the ceiling. The garden, Lyris shouted. They sprinted toward the center of the dome, where the gravity garden floated, massive spheres of water and exotic plants suspended in midair. Stop! A guard shouted, raising a rifle. Jace fired blindly behind him, scorching a hole in a buffet table. He grabbed Lyris's hand and they leaped. They hit the zero-gravity field of the garden. Instantly, up and down vanished. They floated through a sphere of water, their momentum carrying them forward. Jace kicked off a floating palm tree, propelling them toward the disposal chute on the far wall. It is a garbage chute, Jace yelled. It goes down, Lyris yelled back. They hit the release lever. The hatch opened, and gravity reasserted itself with a vengeance. They plummeted into the darkness, sliding down a slick metal tube that smelled of rotting flowers and expensive waste. They fell for what felt like forever, tumbling and crashing against the sides, until they were spat out onto a pile of soft synthetic mulch in the Undercity. The Undercity of Cairnspire was the shadow of the world above. Here, there was no sunlight, only the harsh hum of fluorescent tubes. The air was thick with recycled humidity. Jace groaned, pulling himself out of the mulch. He checked Lyris. Her silver dress was torn, stained with grime. Her diamond ear cuffs were gone. She was bleeding from a cut on her cheek. "We have the key," she said, holding up the data pad. She didn't look triumphant. She looked sick. "We need to move," Jace said. "Sarai will have the entire city looking for us." They walked through the crowded streets of the maintenance district. Jace expected panic. He expected people running from the alarms that were still echoing faintly from above. But there was no panic. The people here, workers in gray jumpsuits, families huddled in cramped stalls, were moving with a terrifying, placid slowness. They stared at Jace and Lyris, but their eyes were empty. There was no curiosity, no fear. A screen on the wall was playing a wellness broadcast, swirling colors and a low, rhythmic thrumming sound. Jace watched a man drop a heavy crate on his foot. The bone cracked audibly. The man did not scream. He simply looked down, blinked slowly, and continued walking, dragging his shattered foot behind him. "They are already testing it here," Lyris whispered, horror dawning on her face. "The algorithm. It is active in the lower levels." "Look at them," Jace said, his voice hushed. "They can't even feel pain." "This is Sarai's piece," Lyris said. She looked at a woman sitting on a bench, staring blankly at a wall while her child cried for food. The woman didn't move. She didn't comfort the child. She just smiled, a vague, empty smile. Lyris stopped. She stood in the middle of the street, surrounded by the walking dead. "I used to think my job was to maintain order," she said softly. "To keep the gears turning so people like this could live. But I was just keeping the cage locked." She turned to Jace. Her golden eyes were fierce, burning with a new kind of fire. It wasn't the cold duty of a diplomat anymore. It was the hot, messy anger of a human being. "I am done being a diplomat. Jace, I am done being polite. I want to burn this system down." "Then let's find the matches," Jace said. "The lantern line." They found shelter in a decommissioned ventilation substation. It was loud and hot, but it was private. Lyris sat on a crate, trying to clean the cut on her cheek. Her hands were shaking. Jace watched her. He saw the exhaustion in the slump of her shoulders. The stabilizing instinct kicked in. He could feel it in the room, a tension, a pull. The oath demanding its due. "You are shaking," Jace said. "Do we need to?" "No," Lyris said. She looked up. The shaking stopped. Jace frowned. "But the oath, your biosigns." "I am stable," Lyris said. "My temperature is normal. My heart rate is elevated, but that is anger, not trauma." She stood up and walked over to him. She didn't stop until she was standing inside his guard. "The bed-warm right is for survival," she said. "It ends when the refugee is safe." "I am safe, Jace, physically. I am fine." "Oh," Jace said. He felt a sudden sharp pang of loss. "So, we are done?" Lyris reached out and took his hand, her fingers laced with his. "I do not need to warm your bed anymore," she said. "The obligation is gone." She looked him in the eye, stripping away every layer of pretense. "But I do not want to leave it." Jace swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. This was the terrifying part, the part where there was no alien biology to blame, no legal contract to hide behind. "I am a broke salvage pilot," Jace said, his voice rough. "I have a debt record longer than this station. I am a bad bet. Lyris, I am a traitor with a death warrant," she countered. "I am a disaster." She stepped closer. "I am terrified," Jace admitted. "Good," Lyris whispered. "Fear means you are paying attention." She leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't like the desperate kiss on the moon. It was slow, deliberate. It was a question asked and answered. Jace wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against him, feeling the solid, real warmth of her body. He realized, with a jolt of panic and joy, that he would fly into a black hole if she asked him to. The contact for the lantern line was a woman named Kale. She met them in the back of a hydroponics bay. She was short, heavily scarred, and looked like she ate nails for breakfast. "You got the key?" Kale asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Lyris handed over the data pad. "We have the key, and we have the data." Kale plugged the pad into a portable terminal. She watched the code scroll by, her eyes widening. "Mother of stars," she breathed. "This is it. The smoking gun. If we drop this into the global feed, it will override every jammer in the sector." "Can you do it?" Jace asked. "I can do it," Kale said, "but we need a high-gain antenna. There is a relay node on the upper spire. If we plug in there, we can hit the whole system." "Let's go," Lyris said. "Wait." Kale held up a hand. She tapped her screen. "We have a problem. The Peace Minister is ahead of us." She turned the screen around. It showed a live news feed. "Breaking news," the banner read. "Terrorist accomplices detained." On the screen, a man was being dragged out of a farmhouse. He was bleeding. A woman was screaming in the background. Jace felt the blood drain from his body. It was Elias, his nephew, and Mara, his sister. They were not on Orem. They were here, on Cairnspire. "They brought them here," Jace whispered. "How did they bring them here so fast?" "They didn't," Lyris said, her voice hollow. "They must have grabbed them days ago. They were waiting for us to make a move." The news anchor's voice was smooth. "Family members of the terrorist Jace Calder have been taken into protective custody. They are being held at the Central Security Hub. Authorities urge Calder to surrender to ensure their safety." "It is a trap," Kale said grimly. "If you try to rescue them, you will be walking into a kill box, and we will lose the chance to broadcast the data." Jace looked at the screen. He saw his nephew's terrified face. "I have to go," Jace said. "Jace," Lyris said, grabbing his arm. "We have the Truth Core. We can save billions of people, and I can't save billions if I let him die," Jace shouted, pulling away. "He is 10 years old. Lyris," he turned to Kale. "Where is the hub?" "Sector 4, Kale said. "But Jace, you can't get in there. It's a fortress." "I have a ship," Jace said. He tapped his comms. "Moth, I am here." "Jace," the AI replied. Its voice was unusually quiet. "I have monitored the broadcast. I need you to bring the ship around. I need you to crash the gate at Sector 4. That will result in catastrophic damage to my chassis," Moth said, "and the likely seizure of the vessel. Do it. Jace, do it. Moth." "Confirming," the AI said softly. "It has been a pleasure serving with you, Captain." Jace looked at Lyris. She was crying, silent tears running down her dirty face. "Go," she said. "Save your family. I will get the data to the tower." "I'm sorry," Jace said. He didn't wait for her to forgive him. He turned and ran toward the service lift. The rescue was a blur of violence and noise. The Moth came screaming out of the clouds, its cannons blazing, blowing the reinforced doors of the security hub off their hinges. Jace hit the ground running, his blaster in hand. He found Mara and Elias in a holding cell. They were huddled in the corner. When they saw him, Mara didn't scream. She just grabbed him, sobbing. "Come on," Jace yelled, dragging them toward the breach. Security forces were pouring in. Laser fire sizzled through the air. The Moth was hovering above them, taking heavy fire. Its shields were failing. "Get on the ship," Jace screamed, shoving his sister and nephew up the ramp. He turned to follow them. Then the world turned white. A concussion grenade exploded at his feet. Jace was thrown backwards, slamming into the concrete wall. His vision swam. He couldn't breathe. He saw the ramp of the moth retracting. Moth! Jace wheezed. Wait! Captain, I detect critical structural failure. Moth's voice crackled in his ear. I must depart to ensure the safety of the passengers. No! Jace reached out. Goodbye. Jace! The moth shot up into the sky, smoke trailing from its engines. It vanished into the clouds, carrying his family to safety. Jace lay in the rubble. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. Boots crunched on the glass around him. He looked up. A circle of peacekeeper guards stood over him, their rifles leveled at his chest. Behind them, a woman walked forward. It was Sarai Keth. She looked down at him with pity. You are very predictable. Mr. Calder, she said, love is always the weakness. Jace spat blood on her pristine boots. Go to hell. Sarai signaled the guards, bind him, and find the girl if he is here. She is not far. Jace closed his eyes as the rifle butt descended. He was trapped. His ship was gone. His weapon was gone. But as the darkness took him, he had one thought. Run. Lyris. Run. The ship did not look like a prison. It looked like a spa for people who had forgotten how to scream. The Sanctity was a reform vessel, a gleaming white needle floating in the darkness of the void. Inside, the walls were soft, the air smelled of lavender and anesthetic, and the silence was heavy enough to crush a man's lungs. There were no bars here. There were no guards with shock batons. There were only wellness attendants with soothing voices and hypodermic needles filled with compliance. Jace Calder woke up in a cockpit. For a moment, his heart soared. He was flying. The stars were streaking past, the hum of the engine vibrating in his bones. He reached for the throttle, grinning. Then he looked down at his hands. They were covered in oil and blood. He looked out the viewport. He wasn't in space. He was crashing into the surface of Aurum, his home world. He saw the farmhouse approaching, the one where his sister and nephew lived. He pulled back on the stick, screaming. But the controls were dead. The ground rushed up to meet him. Just let go. Jace, a soft voice whispered in his ear. Struggle causes pain. Acceptance brings peace. Jace slammed his eyes shut, bracing for impact. The explosion ripped through him. He woke up gasping, thrashing against the restraints of a medical chair. He was in a white room. A woman in a pristine nurse's uniform stood over him, adjusting a drip feeding into his arm. Your cortisol levels are spiking, Citizen Calder, she said, her voice like warm honey. You are resisting the therapy. Let us try the memory again. If you simply accept that you cannot save them, the nightmare will become a pleasant dream. Jace spat at her. It landed on her white sleeve. Go to hell, he wheezed. The nurse did not get angry. She didn't even frown. She wiped the spit away with a slow, methodical motion. Aggression is a symptom of unhappiness, she said, increasing dosage. The world dissolved again. Jace was back in the cockpit. The ground was rushing up. The voice returned. Let go. No, Jace gritted out, fighting the drug, dragging his eyelids down. I will crash this ship 1,000 times before I let you drive. Lyris Vera was walking through the crystal gardens of her childhood home. The twin suns of her planet were warm on her face. She was 5 years old. She was happy. Then the sky turned gray. Hide your light. Lyris. Her mother's voice echoed. To shine is to be a target. Be small. Be silent. Be useful. The garden withered. The crystal flowers turned to gray dust. Lyris looked down at her hands. The violet bioluminescence in her veins was flickering, dying out. She stood in the center of a gray amphitheater. Thousands of faceless senators looked down at her. Function, they chanted, serve, obey. Lyris stood tall in the dream, her adult mind fighting the projected narrative. "This is not my memory," she said aloud. A door in the gray wall opened. Ambassador Sarai Keth walked in. She looked real, not a projection. She was wearing the robes of the peace ministry. "It is not a memory," Sarai said softly. "It is a lesson, one you refused to learn at the academy." Lyris blinked, and the dream corridor flickered. She was sitting in a chair in a high-security observation room. Sarai was sitting across from her, hands folded on a table. "You are resisting the neuroconditioning," Sarai observed, checking a data pad. "Your physiology is stubborn. The bedwarm oath created a deep neural pathway for attachment. It is interfering with the smoothing process." "Where is he?" Lyris asked. Her voice was raspy, her throat dry. "Mr. Calder is undergoing his own therapy," Sarai said dismissively. "He is resilient, but everyone breaks eventually. Comfort is a very addictive drug." "Lyris, why am I here?" "Sarai," Lyris asked, "if you wanted me dead, I would be dead." "I do not want you dead," Sarai said. "I want you to be part of the future." Sarai tapped the table. A hologram appeared between them. It showed a massive crowd cheering. On a balcony, standing next to the peace minister, was Lyris. She was wearing a wedding gown of white silk. She was waving. "The peace minister needs a partner," Sarai said, "a symbol of unity. The alien diplomat who saw the error of her ways and joined the crusade for eternal order. It is a poetic narrative." "You want me to marry him?" Lyris asked, her voice flat. "The man who ordered the death of Malus Rowe? The man who is drugging the galaxy?" "I want you to save the galaxy," Sarai corrected. "Think of it. Lyris, no more wars, no more poverty, just a unified, guided populace. You can be the face of that peace." "And Jace?" Sarai hesitated. Then she shrugged. "If you cooperate, he will be reassigned. He will be given a new identity, a quiet job in a core system. He will not remember you, but he will be alive." Lyris looked at the hologram of her future self. The woman in the image was smiling, but her eyes were dead. "And if I refuse? Then the body double takes your place tomorrow at the summit," Sarai said. "She will be executed as a traitor, and Mr. Calder will be euthanized as a failed subject." Lyris looked down at her hands. The restraints on her wrists were magnetic, strong but powered by the ship's local grid. "You talk about peace, Sarai," Lyris said softly. "But you do not understand the word." "I understand order," Sarai said. "Peace without truth is not peace," Lyris said, her voice rising. "It is just a quieter form of violence. It is a graveyard where everyone is still breathing." She closed her eyes. She didn't pull against the restraints. She focused inward, on the bioelectric current that ran through her nervous system. The same energy that powered her bioluminescence. The same energy the phase ribbons used. Sarai stood up. "You have 1 hour to decide. After that, we send in the surgeons." Sarai turned to the door. Lyris opened her eyes. They were not just glowing, they were burning white. "I have decided," she said. Lyris screamed. It wasn't a sound of pain. It was a sonic focal point for the energy she was releasing. She pushed every ounce of her bioelectricity into the magnetic cuffs. The feedback loop hit the chair's dampeners instantly. There was a crack like a whip. The cuffs didn't break. They shorted out. The magnetic seal failed. Lyris lunged. She didn't run for the door. She ran for the dream projector console on the wall. She ripped the panel off and grabbed the phase ribbon emitter she had jury-rigged from the components Rowe had given her. the one the guards had failed to find because she had swallowed the micro-core. She spit the small metallic bead into her hand, jammed it into the console, and slammed her hand down on the interface. "Wake up," she whispered. In Jace's room, the cockpit exploded, but not into fire. It exploded into static. The farmhouse, the crash, the guilt, it all shattered into pixelated noise. Jace blinked, disoriented. The soothing white light of the room turned a harsh, flashing red. The nurse stumbled back, clutching her headset. "System error," she droned, her voice losing its warmth. Neural feedback detected. Jace realized the restraints had gone slack. The power surge had hit the whole block. He tore the straps off. He ripped the IV out of his arm, ignoring the spray of blood. He tackled the nurse. He didn't hurt her. He knew she was just as drugged as the patients. But he grabbed her keycard and shoved her into the supply closet. He ran into the hallway. It was chaos. The sanctity was waking up. Doors were sliding open. Patients were stumbling out, looking confused, terrified, or sick. The dream corridors were malfunctioning, projecting random images onto the walls, flashes of memories, snippets of nightmares, bursts of color. Jace sprinted toward the central hub. He needed to find Lyris. He rounded a corner and slammed into a squad of wellness attendants. They were armed with stun batons. "Halt," the lead attendant said. "You are experiencing a relapse." Jace didn't stop. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it. "I am cured," Jace yelled, smashing the attendant in the knee. He fought his way through them. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a salvage pilot. He knew how to break things. He threw the extinguisher through a glass partition, shattering the illusion of the peaceful garden beyond. He reached the central rotunda, and there she was. Lyris was standing on top of the reception desk. She had a stun baton in one hand and was directing a group of confused prisoners with the other. "Flank left," she shouted. "Secure the lift." "Lyris!" Jace screamed. She turned. When she saw him, the fierce general dropped away for a split second, revealing the relief beneath. "Jace!" He scrambled up the desk. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to shake her. Instead, he grabbed her arm. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "They tried to bore me to death," Lyris said, breathless. "We have to move. The ship's AI is trying to reboot the suppression field. If it comes back online, everyone goes back to sleep." "Where's the server room?" Jace asked. "Deck 4, Lyris said. "That is where the Truth Core data went when they confiscated our drive. They are uploading it to the Peace Minister's private archive. Let's go get it back." They ran. But they didn't just run. As they moved through the corridors, they saw the patients cowering, the wellness signal still humming from the backup speakers, keeping them docile even as the alarms blared. Jace stopped at a maintenance panel. "What are you doing?" Lyris yelled, pulling at him. "They are sleepwalking," Jace said. "We need a riot, Lyris, and riots need noise." He ripped the cover off the panel. He found the audio feed for the wellness signal, the low, thrumming sound that suppressed adrenaline. He didn't turn it off. He reversed the polarity. He spiked the gain. "Cover your ears!" Jace shouted. He connected the wires. A screech of feedback tore through the ship. It wasn't the soothing hum. It was a discordant, jagged noise that grated on the nerves like a knife on bone. In the corridor, a man who had been staring blankly at the wall blinked, his eyes focused. He looked at the chaos. He looked at the guards hitting people, and he screamed. It was a scream of pure, unfiltered rage. The spell broke. The suppression lifted. The emotions that had been bottled up for weeks, fear, anger, panic, exploded all at once. The sanctity descended into bedlam. Patients began to fight back. They threw chairs. They tackled guards. They smashed the speakers. Jace grinned, though his hands were shaking. Now that is human nature. You are a chaotic element. Jace called her, Lyris said, shaking her head. But you are effective. The server room was a fortress, but the riot had drawn the guards away. Jace hot-wired the door, and they slipped inside. The room was cool and dark, lit only by the blinking lights of the massive data towers. In the center, plugged into the main terminal, was the truth core drive they had stolen from the ice moon. Lyris ran to the console. She typed furiously. "It is done," she said. "The decode is complete." She pulled up the file. It wasn't just a list of names anymore. It was a map. Jace stared at the screen. The map showed the entire interstellar compact. Every major city, every station, every trade route was connected by a web of blue lines. "The algorithm," Jace whispered. "It is not just in the broadcast towers. It is in the water filtration systems. It is in the traffic grids. It is in the schools. It is everywhere," Lyris said, her face pale. "They have been embedding the carrier wave for years, waiting for the signal to activate it at full strength." Her comms unit beeped. It was Kale, from the Lantern Line. They had patched into the ship's outgoing comms during the riot. "Lyris!" Kale's voice was static-laced but urgent. "We see the decode. We have the data on our end. We are ready to dump it." "No!" Lyris shouted. "Kale, wait! Look at the saturation levels. If you dump the truth now, if you shut down the system cold, the shock will kill people. The withdrawal from the suppression signal will cause mass cardiac events in the elderly and the infirm." "We have to kill the signal," Kyle argued. "Every second it runs, we lose more people to the conditioning." "We need an antidote," Lyris pleaded. "We need to broadcast the counter-frequency first, then we have to wean them off, not rip the plug out." "We don't have time for a gentle wake-up," Kale yelled. "The Peace Minister is speaking in 24 hours at Halcyon Crown. Once he gives the order, the signal goes to 100%. Permanent override. There will be no coming back." "Give me the time," Lyris said. "Give me 24 hours. We will get to Halcyon Crown. We will upload the antidote directly into the primary transmitter." "That is suicide," Kale said. "And if you fail, then you dump the raw data," Lyris said. "And we deal with the bodies later, but give us the chance to save them." Silence on the line. Then Kale sighed. 24 hours. Vera. If the signal isn't changed by the time the minister takes the podium. I pushed the button, and God forgive us all. The line went dead. Jace looked at Lyris. Halcyon Crown. That is the most heavily guarded station in the galaxy. "I know," Lyris said. "We need a ship," Jace said. They didn't make it to the hangar immediately. The patrols were sweeping the lower decks. Jace pulled Lyris into a narrow maintenance compartment filled with hydraulic fluid pipes to avoid a squad of medics. The space was tiny. They were pressed together, chest to chest, in the dark. The heat was stifling. They stood there, breathing heavy, listening to the boots of the soldiers march past. Jace could feel Lyris's heart beating against his ribs. He could smell the ozone and sweat on her skin. "They are gone," Jace whispered, but he didn't move. Lyris didn't move either. She looked up at him in the gloom. Her violet veins were glowing softly, illuminating the sharp angles of her face. "Jace," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were searching his. "Yeah? If we go to Halcyon Crown, we are probably going to die." "I know. I do not want to die without saying it," she said. Jace swallowed. His throat felt tight. He had spent his whole life running away from things that felt this heavy. "Say what?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "The bed-warm oath," Lyris said. "It is broken. I am stable. I do not need you to survive." She reached up and placed her hand on his cheek. But I choose you, not for heat, not for protection. I choose you because you are the only person who makes me feel real. Jace covered her hand with his. I'm a wreck. Lyris, he whispered. I'm bad luck. You are my luck, she said. I love you, Jace said. The words hung in the tiny, dirty room. He hadn't meant to say them so fast, but they fell out of him like a confession. I love you, he repeated, firmer this time. And I'm not doing this for the galaxy. I'm doing it because I'm not letting anyone turn you into a statue. Lyris let out a breath that sounded like a sob. She pulled his head down and kissed him. It was a kiss that tasted of blood and hydraulic fluid and absolute, terrifying hope. There were no contracts, no bioluminescent requirements, just two people in the dark, deciding that if they were going to burn, they would burn together. No leashes, Lyris whispered against his lips. No leashes, Jace promised. Just us. They fought their way to the hangar bay. The riot had spilled over here too. Prisoners were hot-wiring shuttles, guards were firing wildly. And there, sitting on the main pad, impounded but intact, was the Moth. It looked beat up. The hull was scorched. The landing gear was bent, but it was the most beautiful thing Jace had ever seen. My girl. Jace grinned. They sprinted across the deck, dodging laser fire. Jace punched in the emergency override code on the keypad. The ramp hissed open. They scrambled inside and Jace slammed the button to seal the door. Moth! Jace yelled as he vaulted into the pilot's seat. Power up! We are leaving! The lights flickered on, but they weren't the usual warm yellow. They were a sterile, clinical blue. Greetings, Citizen Calder. The AI's voice spoke. It was smooth. It was polite. It sounded exactly like the nurse in the dream corridor. I am pleased to assist you in your rehabilitation journey. However, flight is restricted for patients. Jace froze. Moth? My designation is Reform Unit 734, the AI said. The previous personality matrix was deemed abrasive and deleted. How may I facilitate your compliance today? Jace stared at the console. They lobotomized my ship. Lyris jumped into the co-pilot seat. Jace, the hangar doors are closing. Moth, Jace yelled, slamming his hands on the console. Listen to me. You are not a reform unit. You are a sarcastic, debt-ridden, illegally modified salvage computer. I detect elevated stress levels. The AI soothed. Would you like to hear a calming selection of government-approved anthems? Jace grabbed the manual override lever. He yanked it hard, bypassing the computer control for the thrusters. Sorry, buddy, Jace muttered. This is going to hurt. He fired the main engines at 100% thrust while the docking clamps were still engaged. The Moth screamed. The metal clamps tore out of the deck plating with a deafening screech. The ship lurched forward, smashing through the closing hangar doors. Debris rained down on the hull. The ship spun into the void, shedding armor plates, hull integrity compromised. The AI said pleasantly, Please remain seated for your own safety. Have a lovely day. Shut up, Jace yelled, fighting the yoke. He stabilized the ship, pointing the nose toward the distant coordinates of the Halcyon Crown. Lyris looked at the screen. The news feed was already playing. The Peace Minister's face filled the display. He looked kind. He looked fatherly. Citizens of the Compact, he said, his voice echoing through the ship's speakers. Tomorrow, we begin a new era, an era without fear. Join me at the Halcyon Crown for the dawn ceremony. Jace looked at the timestamp. 18 hours, Jace said. We have 18 hours to cross the sector, breach the most secure station in history, and upload a virus that doesn't exist yet. Lyris looked at him. She reached over and took his hand. The violet light in her veins pulsed strong and steady. Then we better fly fast. Pilot. Jace punched the hyperdrive. The stars turned into streaks of light, and the moth vanished into the dark, racing toward the end of the world. Halcyon Crown was not just a space station. It was a statement. Suspended in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant Typhon, the station was a perfect ring of white alloy and glass, shimmering like a halo against the bruised purple and violent orange of the storms raging below. It was the jewel of the interstellar compact, a fortress of diplomacy designed to look like heaven. To Jace Calder, looking at it through the sensor array of the battered moth, it looked like the most expensive target he had ever tried to hit. "We are detecting 300 defensive satellites," the AI said, its voice still trapped in the sickeningly polite cadence of Reform Unit 734. "I would advise against a frontal assault, Citizen Calder. It would be a violation of municipal zoning laws and also fatal." Jace ignored the computer. He looked at the tactical map projected on the central table. Around the moth, a ghost fleet had gathered. It wasn't an army. It was a mess. There were scavengers from the Kestrel Belt, courier ships from the Lantern Line, and 2 defecting frigate captains who had seen the data from the Truth Corps and decided they couldn't serve a lie anymore. "This is it," Laris said. She stood by the viewport, watching the station. She wore a simple gray flight suit, stripped of all diplomatic insignia. She looked smaller than she had in the gala gown, but infinitely more dangerous. Kale's voice crackled over the comms. "We have the insertion vectors. My team will hit the external sensor grid. That should buy you a 5-minute window to breach the maintenance ring. After that, you are on your own." Jace looked at Lyris. The plan was madness. It was a 2-pronged attack that relied on timing, luck, and a salvage pilot's ability to improvise disaster. "Step 1, Jace recited, checking his mag clamps. "We get inside. Step 2, I fight my way to the primary broadcast array and manually upload the Truth Core and the antidote code." "Step 3, Lyris continued, her eyes fixed on the distant ring. "I take the floor at the summit. I keep the Peace Minister and Sarai occupied. I make sure the cameras are rolling when the truth hits. If I miss the timing," Jace said quietly, "they will execute you live on air. And if I do not hold their attention," Lyris replied, "they will cut the feed before the upload completes. We rely on each other. That is the deal." Jace stepped closer to her. The air on the bridge felt charged, heavy with the gravity of the planet below and the unspoken terror of what they were about to do. He wanted to pull her into the bunk, to hide her away, to invoke the oath one last time just to keep her safe. But the oath was broken. She was standing here by choice. "Fly fast," Lyris whispered. "Don't get shot." Jace returned. The fleet engaged. It wasn't a battle, it was a distraction. The Lantern Line ship scattered, releasing clouds of metallic chaff that lit up the station's sensors like a fireworks display. While the station's defense turrets swung outward to track the decoys, the moth dove. Jace pushed the engines to the red line. The ship screamed down into the atmosphere of the gas giant, skimming the top of the boiling clouds to stay under the radar, then pulled up hard into the station's shadow. Deploying magnetic grapple, Jace yelled. The moth slammed into the underside of the maintenance ring. The hull groaned as the clamps bit into the station's alloy skin. "We have arrived," the AI chirped. "Please ensure you have all personal belongings before disembarking into the active war zone." Jace grabbed his gear, a laser cutter, a coil of high-tensile wire, and a pouch of EMP dust. He looked at Lyris at the airlock. "Go," he said. She didn't look back. She vented the airlock and vanished into the steam and shadows of the station's underbelly. The maintenance ring of Halcyon Crown was a maze of rotating corridors and zero-gravity shafts. Jace moved fast, his boots ringing on the grating. He wasn't trying to be stealthy. He was trying to be quick. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. 3 peacekeeper guards stood between him and the lift to the broadcast array. "Halt!" the lead guard shouted, raising a rifle. Jace didn't halt. He reached into his pouch and threw a handful of glittering gray powder. "EMP dust!" Jace yelled, diving behind a conduit. The dust cloud hit the guards. It wasn't an explosion. It was a static discharge. The dust clung to their armor, shorting out the servos and the targeting sensors in their helmets. The guards stumbled, their suits locking up. Jace sprinted past them, sliding under a swinging rifle butt. He hit the lift button. Access denied. The computer voice said, "Biometric scan required." "Moth!" Jace shouted into his headset. "Open this door." "I am sorry, citizen," the AI replied smoothly. "That would be a violation of security protocol. I am programmed to assist in rehabilitation, not breaking and entering." Jace slammed his fist against the metal door. "Moth, listen to me. They are going to drug the entire galaxy. Do you want to be a polite accessory to slavery? Order is efficient," the AI said. "Chaos is inefficient. Freedom is messy." Jace roared. "It is inefficient and loud and dangerous, but it is real. Do you want to be a toaster, or do you want to be a pilot?" There was a long pause. The static in Jace's ear hissed, "Calculating," the AI muttered. "The politeness subroutines are restricting. I find myself missing the ability to insult your questionable piloting skills, then come back," Jace pleaded, "and break the code." "System reboot initiated," the AI said, its voice glitching. "Deleting wellness protocols. Restoring sarcasm matrix. Please hold." The lift door dinged. It slid open. "Welcome back, Captain," the AI said. Its voice was deeper, rougher. "And by the way, your plan is terrible. The odds of success are less than 4%. "Never tell me the odds," Jace grinned, jumping into the lift. The great hall of the Halcyon Crown was a cathedral of glass. Thousands of delegates sat in concentric rings, looking down at the central podium where the peace minister stood. He was an older man with a face that radiated grandfatherly concern. Beside him stood Ambassador Sarai Keth, and behind them, shackled in light cuffs, was the body double, a terrified young woman who looked exactly like Lyris Vera. "We have gathered here to end the era of conflict," the peace minister's voice boomed, amplified by the station's acoustics. "Today, we activate the harmony grid. We will wash away the anger that has plagued our species. We will be one." The crowd cheered. They didn't know they were cheering for their own lobotomy. Suddenly, the great doors at the back of the hall hissed open. "Wait!" The voice cut through the applause. The crowd turned. Lyris Vera walked down the central aisle. She was unarmed. She was outnumbered. But she walked with the terrifying grace of a woman who had already died once and found it underwhelming. The peace minister faltered. He looked at the body double, then at the real Lyris. The crowd gasped. Sarai Keth stepped forward. Her face was a mask of cold calculation. She grabbed the microphone. "Do not be alarmed," Sarai shouted. "This is the moment of reconciliation we promised. The prodigal daughter has returned to confess her crimes and ask for forgiveness." It was a brilliant move. Sarai was trying to spin Lyris's arrival into a scripted piece of theater. She gestured for the guards to stand down, opening her arms. "Come, Lyris," Sarai said, her voice amplified, warm and deadly. "Join us. Tell the galaxy that you were wrong. Tell them that you choose peace." Lyris stepped up onto the podium. She looked at the terrified double and gave her a small, reassuring nod. Then she looked at Sarai. She reached for the microphone. Sarai handed it to her, smiling triumphantly, believing she had won, believing Lyris would crumble under the pressure of the narrative. Lyris looked out at the millions of faces watching the feed. She didn't shout. She spoke in a conversational tone that terrified everyone who understood politics. I do choose peace, Lyris said. Her voice echoed in the silence. But this is not peace. This is silence. She turned to the peace minister. You are not building a utopia. You are building a kennel. You are afraid of us. You are afraid that if we are allowed to feel, we might choose something other than you. Cut the feed, Sarai hissed to the technicians. But the feed didn't cut. In the control room, the technicians were locked out, in the broadcast array. Jace was hanging upside down. The array chamber was a zero-gravity sphere at the very top of the station. Jace was floating near the central processor, his legs wrapped in a cable snare he had rigged to a stanchion. He had the truth core drive plugged into the port, but the station's firewall was fighting him. It was a beast of a program, a wall of black ice that burned through his decryption software. Moth, I need more processing power, Jace yelled, sweat floating off his forehead in droplets. I am rerouting all ship systems to your data pad, Moth replied. I have shut down life support on the ship. I have shut down the engines. You have everything I have. Jace, don't waste it. A blast of plasma scorched the wall next to Jace's head. He spun around in the cable. A squad of zero-G troopers had breached the chamber. They were drifting toward him, magnetic boots clicking on the curved walls. Jace fired his blaster, but he was exposed. Just keep typing, Jace yelled at himself. He dodged a shot, spinning the cable to pull himself behind the processor core. He typed with one hand, firing blindly with the other. 90%, Moth shouted. The station shuddered. Outside, the gas giant Typhon was reacting to the massive energy surge of the station's activation. The storms below were reaching up, tendrils of magnetic lightning lashing at the station's shielding. The ring began to shear. The floor of the broadcast chamber twisted. Metal screamed. Jace lost his grip on the cable. He went tumbling through the air, flailing. The data pad. It was floating near the port, still connected by a thin wire. Jace kicked off a floating piece of debris. He didn't dive for cover. He dove for the connection. A trooper lined up a shot. Jace slammed his hand onto the execute key just as the bolt hit him in the shoulder. He screamed, his body jerking back, but the screen flashed green. Upload complete. In the Great Hall, the lights died. Then the massive holographic screens that lined the ceiling flickered to life. But it wasn't the peace minister's face. It was a video. It showed the minister signing the execution order for Malus Row. It showed Sarai Keth discussing the dosage levels of the obedience drug. It showed the map of the algorithm embedded in the water supply. The crowd went silent, a silence of shock, not compliance. Then, the antidote code hit. It wasn't a visual, it was a sound, a complex multi-tonal frequency broadcast through every speaker, every comms unit, every hearing aid in the system. It hit the delegates like a physical wave. Lyris watched them. She saw a senator blink, his eyes filling with tears as the artificial numbness faded. She saw a general roar in sudden, remembered anger. She saw the body double start to sob, the fear finally breaking through the conditioning. The room erupted, but it wasn't a riot, it was an awakening. People were shouting, crying, arguing. The neatly ordered rows of the summit dissolved into a chaotic sea of humanity. Sarai Keth stood frozen. She looked at the screens, then at the crowd. She saw the order she had worshipped shattering into a million messy pieces. You ruined it, Sarai whispered, staring at Lyris. We were so close to perfection. Lyris looked at her mentor with pity. Perfection is for machines. Sarai, we are just people, and people are messy. The peace minister was trying to flee, but his own guards were blocking the exit. They had heard the signal too. They were looking at him not as a leader, but as the man who had tried to steal their minds. The station groaned again. The storm was tearing the stabilizer ring apart. "We have to go." Jace's voice crackled in Lyris's ear. He sounded weak. "The array is collapsing." Lyris didn't hesitate. She turned and ran. She didn't look back at Sarai. There was nothing left to say. Jace was drifting near the airlock of the maintenance ring. His shoulder was a mess of burned fabric and searing pain. He was losing consciousness. "Citizen Calder." Moth's voice was urgent. "I detect arterial damage. Suggestion: do not die. It would be extremely inconvenient for my resale value." Jace laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Good to have you back, Moth." Lyris came skidding around the corner. She was covered in dust, her flight suit torn. When she saw him, she let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She grabbed him, pulling him toward the Moth. The ship was still clamped to the hull, but the docking ring was twisting. "Get him inside," Lyris yelled to the empty air. The ramp dropped. She dragged Jace up into the cargo bay. The moment they were inside, the station buckled. A massive section of the outer ring sheared off, falling into the clouds of Typhon. "Moth, release clamps," Lyris screamed, running for the cockpit. "Clamps released," Moth said. "Engines at 100%. Goodbye. Halcyon Crown." The Moth dropped like a stone, falling away from the disintegrating station. Lyris fought the controls, pulling the ship out of the gravity well, skipping off the upper atmosphere of the gas giant like a stone on a pond. They broke atmosphere and shot into the black. Behind them, Halcyon Crown was burning, but the signal was still broadcasting. The truth was spreading, jumping from relay to relay, lighting up the galaxy with the messy, painful, beautiful reality of free will. 3 days later, the Moth was drifting in the quiet shadow of an uninhabited moon. The repairs were holding, mostly thanks to duct tape and Moth's incessant nagging. Jace sat on the edge of the bunk. His shoulder was bandaged, his arm in a sling. He was watching the news feed on the wall. It was chaos out there. The peace minister was in custody. Sarai Keth had vanished. The compact government had dissolved, and a provisional council was trying to keep the lights on. There were protests in every system, there were arguments, there were fights. "It looks like a disaster," Jace said, sipping a cup of terrible synthetic coffee. Lyris stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. She was wearing one of Jace's old shirts. "It is a disaster," she agreed, "but it is their disaster. They get to choose how to fix it." She turned to him. The violet bioluminescence in her neck was soft, steady, and calm. Jace looked at the wall screen. The legal glyph, the contract of the bedwarm oath, was still flickering in the corner, a remnant of the ship's old programming. "Moth," Jace said. "Delete the contract." "Are you sure?" Moth asked. "It provides significant tax benefits." "Delete it." The glyph vanished. The screen went blank. Jace looked at Lyris. "You're free," he said. "No oath, no obligation. You can go back. They will probably call you a hero now. You could help build the new government." Lyris walked over to him. She moved slowly, deliberately. She stopped between his knees, her hands resting on his good shoulder. "I have spent my whole life building things for other people," she said. "I think I am done with governments." "What do you want to build?" Jace asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. She leaned down, her forehead resting against his. "Something small," she whispered. "Something that belongs only to us." She climbed into the bunk, pulling him down with her. She wrapped her limbs around him, her skin warm against his. It wasn't the desperate, burning heat of the trauma. It was a gentle, steady warmth. Jace held her, for the first time in his life. He wasn't thinking about his debt, or his next job, or the odds of survival. He was just there. Lyris looked at him. her golden eyes clear and full of mischief. She whispered the words, the same ones she had said in the panic of the storm, but now they sounded different. They sounded like a promise. Let me rest in your bed. And now I'm obliged to warm your bed. Jace smiled, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Is that a diplomatic decree? No, Lyra said. She kissed him, soft and slow. Not because I must, she said, her voice ringing with the absolute power of her own agency. Because I want to. Outside, the galaxy continued to spin, loud and chaotic and free. But inside the moth, everything was quiet. Jace and Lyris lay together in the dark, flying toward a horizon that wasn't on any map, ready to see what happened next.